And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful.
Hello, hello.
You waved at me.
Oh, wait, this is not a visual medium. I forgot.
Welcome to Dream Idiots, everybody. I'm Morris, and the Basso Profundo you heard earlier. That's my co-hosting partner, Bryan.
Yes, welcome back. Thanks for listening and joining us yet again for another week of random stupidity, the week called Dream Idiots.
We heard from some folks regarding had a couple people say that they've actually been to Chautauquas. So that was really cool to hear from people who heard the episode and then responded almost immediately about their experience at Chautauquas in America. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was random and weird considering I had never even heard of them, and now I need to do some googling and see if they still exist anywhere near where I am or what the deal is. But yes, thanks for listening and subscribing and doing those things. On the platform you're listening on, please give us 5 stars if you haven't, and give us a review. Shoot me your favorite curse word and we'll look it up and feature it on a future episode perhaps. But thanks for doing all those things for us, we appreciate it.
Yes,
And
indeed.
we're up to episode 35. We're trucking, we're cooking with gas now.
Woohoo! My dad used to say that all the time. And you get to go first this week.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so I kind of set aside the story that I was going to do this week. In exchange, I kind of piecemealed some stuff together, mostly because I had some partial stories that really weren't enough to feature in an entire episode. And so we're going to talk about a few different things, but I wanted to do these this week in honor of the fact, or I don't know how you say that, but QE2 is now DEAD. So that's not an editorial on my part, but these are things mostly related to England and marginally related to royalty and English life. So this is kind of a meandering tale of a couple different things, but hopefully you will like and still find entertaining. So it's likely at some point during your childhood, Morris, that your mother may have threatened you with, when your father gets home, he's going to read you the Riot Act. You've heard that expression, I'm sure.
Uh oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
So the Riot Act was an actual thing. So in 1714, George the First became King of England, and his opponents were not a big fan, and they were leading rebellions and protests against him. And at this time, the British government was anxious to sort of quell the violence, quell the all the outrage, and so there actually was a law passed in 1714 called the Riot Act. It allowed public officials, law enforcement, I guess at the time, to break up gatherings of 12 or more people. They would go to this gathering and read aloud a proclamation warning everyone there that if they were, those that were gathered, that they had to disperse within 1 hour, or they would be found guilty of a felony punishable by death, which
Good
seems a
Lord.
little, which seems a little excessive. Um, so that's where the Riot Act comes from. And so related to that, we're going to talk a little bit about three other riots that happened, that one of which I'm feel sure I have heard more about on another podcast, but I'm not totally certain of that. So maybe you can fill me in if you know anything more about any of these three. These are sort of three little snapshots of other riots that are sort of ridiculous in their own way. So the first one, we're going to Toronto in the 1850s. So we talked about Toronto back many weeks ago when we did the episode talking about the Toronto Stork Derby.
Yep. Yep.
So in 1850s, Toronto was, comparatively a bit of a sleepy town. Population of only 30,000. New York City at this time already had a population over 500,000, and this was a town where men could basically misbehave. 30,000 people. There were 203 beer halls, 152 taverns, and 140 brothels. So, morals weren't big, at this time in Toronto. And so a riot broke out when a drunk fireman, knocked the hat off a clown while visiting a brothel. The fireman refused to pick it up, and then the fighting began. So this was a days-long brawl between literally clowns and firemen. Circus tents were torn down and lit on fire. I mean, things are being lit on fire by firemen, and went on for days. So
well, that's how they got their name, Bryan. Firemen. Come on.
Exactly. That's the origin of it. So the result of all this carnage was that the whole of, eventually, when it finally died down days later, the whole of the Toronto police had to be completely overhauled. It's just, absolutely fantastic tale of carnage laid waste. And I should imagine, 1850s being a random Yahoo who's traveling through this part of the world at this time and riding into Toronto on a horse and seeing clowns and firemen. Like, what drug trip is this? And how nuts. Yes, seeing this and then immediately deciding to, let's just move on to Ottawa or somewhere else. So
clowns are fighting back with pies and little flowers that squirt water, and
little cars are pulling up and 18 people are piling out. What? So clowns versus firemen. Riot number 2, there have been lots of riots over the years that respond by food, lack of food, increased price of food, etc.
Sure.
I mean, sort of the French Revolution was kind of spawned by the price of bread, going skyrocketing. And so there are a number of instances in which I think there are multiple periods of time where there were basically bread riots in France. I feel, I didn't do this, but I feel confident that if you went on Google, you could just pick, type in any geographic location and a food that is known in the region, and the word riot, and see how many times, Korea, kimchi, Japan, right. I mean, I feel confident this is a constant theme, because food is something that's always been tied to politics and economics, et cetera. So the rich are always trying to screw over the poor in some form or fashion. So this is a common theme.
Civilization is just 3 square meals away from collapse.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, sure.
Saying? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, in Nottingham, England, in 1766, they had the Great Nottingham Cheese Riot. Cheese was seized. That's a great expression. Cheese was seized because it was too expensive. They, it was skyrocketing, and I don't necessarily associate cheese with England necessarily, but because it was so incredibly expensive, people were stealing it, and at the time you had these huge big wheels of cheese, they'd be swiped and then rolled down the street. The mayor of Nottingham was trying to quell the violence. He apparently was knocked unconscious and suffered a concussion when he was hit by a gigantic wheel of Munster. So the Great Cheese Riot.
So if you're a member of Monty Python and you participate in that, will be a John Cleese cheese seizure.
Yes, huh? And then finally, Russia, and Russia is famous for pretty much one thing in terms of things that they eat and drink: vodka. In 1858, Russia placed a tax on all vodka, basically tripling its price. It finally got so bad it went up to 10 rubles a bucket, and yes, somehow it was sold in buckets. I don't know when bottles came about, but 10 rubles a bucket. An average clerk, say, only made 25 rubles a year. So, but I mean, it wasn't like it was slightly expensive; it was outrageously expensive. I mean, it was impossible. It was unattainable.
Vodka comes from what, Bryan? Cows? Is that right?
Comes from cows? No. What? Potatoes, I think. So
I was trying to think of the bucket reason. I couldn't think of anything. So.
I don't know.
Freshly milked vodka.
Basically the problem that came from this is because Russia was relying completely, was very, very dependent on this tax revenue, but now no one could afford to actually buy vodka, and so the government was tanking financially because they were gathering no tax revenue whatsoever. So the government now weirdly is motivated to make you an alcoholic. Temperance movements started up all over the country. People took oaths of sobriety during this period of time, and again, it was just a nightmare for the government. They needed money in order to function, and they were broke. So the government started giving away vodka for free in order to create demand, which is always always a good business to be in. And they were, Russia to this day is known for heavy-handed tactics. They were so desperate to create demand that some members, advocates for temperance, were actually force-fed vodka with a funnel in order to make them drunks as well. And eventually, temperance movements were actually banned outright across the country. So you couldn't go meet in an organized way with other folks who were trying to not drink because it was so wildly important to the government.
But Comrade Bryan, look at it this way: first taste is free.
Right, like completely fucking insane.
Such an horror show.
So the last time the Riot Act was actually used, or at least it was attempted, was in Glasgow in 1919, and the person reading it out, for some reason, when I read this, I pictured Alan Rickman doing his impression of the Sheriff of Nottingham, reading it out. But apparently, as he was reading it out, the document was ripped out of his hands, and at least at first glance, initially, because this is 100 years ago, and the Scots tend to be overly polite, he kind of just went, and just walked off, and the rioting continued. But then later on, apparently it was quelled quite violently. But it took, so it started in the early 1700s. By early 1800s, Riot Act is being used more generally as a warning or a reprimand. And even though the law stopped being used in 1919, the law was actually still on the books in Great Britain until 1973, that law enforcement had to go to any gathering of more than 12 and read this document out. But they didn't repeal it formally until the very early 70s. So
they made the rookies on the force do it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then one more random small thing that I read seriously immediately before we started recording, and that is there's all this stuff online about Queen Elizabeth II and all these things about her and her, etc. And one of the things I read, which I'm gonna dive into in greater detail, but this interested me. In 1986, Queen Elizabeth II sent a letter to Australia. It is addressed to the Prime Minister with instructions that it not be opened until the year 2085. No one has any idea what's inside. It's actually, the letter itself is apparently on display in some museums, so you can actually see the envelope. Like the weirdest thing ever. If I dropped a letter in the mail to you today and said, here you go, Morris, don't open until January 1st, 2023, you'd say, fuck you, and you'd open it. Like the weirdest thing ever. But so no one, now that she's dead, no one has any idea what's inside this letter. But I am sort of hoping that it's some weird random admin error and that there's some ridiculous ceremony in 2085, and this envelope was opened and they find a letter that says, "Dearest Fergie, here's that recipe for boysenberry jam you wanted. Truly sorry about Andrew. He breastfed until he was 9, and well, he's always been a bit of a twat, so that'd be great." And then we have to go back and look through Fergie's records, and somewhere in her diary there'd be, I got this weird letter from the Queen. Yeah.
What if it's just a perfect penmanship? Dear Australia, do you like me? Checkbox, yes or no?
Yeah, yes, no, maybe.
I like yours better though. That's good. Andrew. There
you go. Some random silliness for her royal doorstop. I mean, whatever she is. All right. I do have a curse word for you. You ready?
Yes, I am.
It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
So I enjoy a word that does double duty or triple duty or quadruple duty. In this case, this is a word where I'm not going to give you the word. I'm going to give you some definitions and see how long it takes you to guess the word. Okay?
All right.
It has, I don't have all of them here. I think it has a total of 23 different definitions.
Bryan, I can guess that curse word in 7 notes.
All right, here we go. First one.
Okay.
It's a Liverpool slang for an alleyway that runs behind a row of terraced houses. It's also a kid's go-kart made from a scaffold plank, some bits of wood, a piece of rope for steering, and a set of pram wheels. It's also someone who covers for you or acts as a lookout while you're committing a crime. It's also to upset, disturb, or disarrange in some way. It's also a door, hatch, or some other form of opening from one room to another, typically to a loft or to a cellar.
I'm
No idea.
no idea.
It's a name given to a person on ecstasy. Confusingly, it is also a slang term used to refer to a penis, but also sometimes used to refer to a vagina.
A raver?
No.
No.
In Newfoundland, it's a device used to reel in fish from the water. In golf, it's a pitching wedge.
A hot rod?
No.
A sand
Uh,
wedge?
no.
Okay.
This one, if you don't get this one, we'll give it away, I think. It's a unit of measure when dealing with alcohol. One of these is 1.5 ounces.
Hot shot?
No.
A twat shot?
What is a twat shot?
I don't know. It's your word.
It's not my word. This is a word in the dictionary. A twat shot. Thank you. We're adding that to the vernacular. Okay.
I don't know.
A black Jewish person.
I
No?
I
Nothing?
don't know.
This one gives it away. Last one. One who jigs or makes jig-like movements. The word is jigger. A jigger, unit of measurement, dealing with alcohol.
Okay.
Pitching wedge.
All right.
Yeah. So when your mother.
Oh, that one's really horrible. The one you just mentioned. That one's bad, Brian. You shouldn't have said that. That's horrible.
I didn't make it up. Don't get mad at me. It's an awful word. I didn't make it up. Yes, it is an awful, disgusting word. It was confusing when your mother yelled at you, Morris, quit playing with your jigger, go outside and play with your jigger. Like, wait, what?
Okay, for once I'm speechless. You win. That one was. Is this how you feel after the college rhyming games?
Yes, very much so. I've won Dream Idiots. That's it, folks. We're off. We're done.
Okay. I don't even know where to go now. That's is it my turn yet?
You're up.
So I want to start this off by giving special thanks to a Lyft driver I had a while back whose name is Bryan, but he spells it the regular normal way, not the wrong way, not your way. Right. So
his mother doesn't love him. I know. It's fine.
So Bryan related this story to me, this not our Bryan, but I was telling him about our Bryan's Wyoming baseball story from episode 33, the Wyoming Penitentiary All-Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryan, the Lyft driver, attended the University of Wyoming, where he played football for the Cowboys in the mid-'70s. University of Wyoming Cowboys. And so I want to tell you the story of the Wyoming Black 14. Have you heard this story?
No.
Okay. So the Wyoming Cowboys were riding a high tide of 3 straight Western Athletic Conference championships and started the 1969 season off 6-0. Pretty good. They were ranked 16th in the nation, and they led the entire nation in rushing yards. So that's not bad.
That's great.
Game 4 of that 6-game winning span was a home contest against the Brigham Young University Cougars. Okay, from
okay. Sure.
Good old BYU. Now, the Black Student Alliance at the University of Wyoming called for a protest against the racial policies of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'll get to that in a moment. The chancellor of the BSA, the Black Student Alliance, was a doctoral math student named Willie Black, and he wrote a letter to the University of Wyoming president and the athletic director explaining the group's plan to demonstrate at the BYU game. He wrote, quote, "Our humanity demands that all people of goodwill, whatever their color, athletes included, protest this policy." He also called for the university and the Western Athletic Conference, I'll refer to that as the WAC from here on out, to stop using, quote, student monies and university facilities to play host to BYU. Because, he argued, to do otherwise would, quote, in part, sanction those inhuman and racist policies. So 14 Black players on the Wyoming football team approached the head coach, Lloyd Eaton, before that October 18th game, and they wanted to discuss this issue with him. The players asked if they could wear black armbands in order to protest basically two things. One was their treatment by BYU fans in the previous season's game played in Provo, Utah. Okay, so they were yelled at, racial epithets were flying freely, as you might imagine. Now, what I've got to say is, from my standpoint, okay, having lived in Utah for 6 years, Utah sports culture in the 90s, so I can't imagine what it was like in the 70s, was awful. The one Jazz game I went to was filled with racial epithets. There was this story on the news affiliate, the NBC affiliate, I think it was KSL, Channel 5, ran a Karl Malone story where they were interviewing one of the like courtside season ticket holders, right? Right there down on the floor.
Right.
And he actually said on TV, he said, because they were talking about Carl's contract negotiations and how it was going to be difficult. And the guy actually said, Carl's like a big old dog you have chained up in your backyard. He snarls and snaps and some other nonsense. But I'm sitting with my mouth open going, did you just compare a black man to a chained up animal on the news? Is that what you just did? I heard a lot of anti-gay slurs at U of U, embarrassingly U of U basketball games. And then one time during the fall contest between BYU and Utah, a couple of students of mine went down for the game, which was always around Thanksgiving. And afterwards I saw them and I said, hey, how was the game? And I think they were a pair of sisters. And apparently this woman approached them and yelled and called them a bunch of Utah whores.
Oh,
because they were wearing their Utah. And then the best part was, so she screams that at them. And then she says, and then my student says, and she said that in front of her grandchildren. So in general, they're protesting the way that BYU fans had treated them the year before, mainly with racial epithets.
Right.
The second thing they were protesting was the policy of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which forbade black people from the priesthood in the church, or, and I didn't know this part, even entering the temple. You couldn't even enter the temple in Temple Square.
If you couldn't walk into the temple if you're black.
Nope.
In 1969, 70?
This is 69. This policy changed in 1978, some 9 years after the events I'm describing here. There were even policies, Brian, against having black scout leaders in LDS-operated Boy Scout troops. Okay, so that's what they went to their coach with, saying, hey, we would like to protest this. And they wanted to do it by wearing black armbands, basically. Now, the Cowboys had a strict no protesting policy. After meeting with the players the second time, Eaton dismissed all 14 of them from the team unilaterally. The Cowboys beat BYU 40-7, which led to the belief that the team would be just fine without the 14 missing players. The demonstration that was held outside the stadium during the game was very peaceful. In fact, Laramie Police Chief Vernon Brazili said of the students and the demonstration, quote, what I want these kids to understand is that we're here to protect them, not to fight with them. Their fight is with the university. All of the football players on the team are good kids, both black or white ones, real gentlemen. Another coach we had used to bring in ex-convicts to play, real hoodlums, always drunk, always in trouble. I'm glad these kids today are different. Interesting, and kind of a callback to your story about the convicts and all-stars of the baseball team.
Right, sure.
Now, they also defeated San Jose State at home the next following game. This is a weird season because they had their 5 home games all in a row, and then 5 road games to end out the season, which I don't know if that's a thing
bizarre,
back then or what. The San Jose State Spartans football team had been petitioned by another group calling itself the Committee for the 14, and the committee asked San Jose State to boycott their game against the Cowboys. The school decided to go ahead and play the game, but they wore armbands of their own in solidarity with the Black 14 at the Wyoming game. San Jose State's a great school. One of the smartest people I've ever known went to graduate school at San Jose State. And, to me, it's just reflective of this community around it supported Eaton and the decision.
Mhm.
I mean, like a 3-1 margin, they supported what the coach decided. Here's some quotes from the members of the Black 14. These are from Joe Williams, who's a co-captain. We wanted to see if we could wear black armbands in the game, or black socks, or black X's on our helmets. And he, the coach, had said no. If he had said no, we would be willing to protest in nothing but our black skins. Second quote from Joe Williams. He came in, sneered at us, and yelled that we were off the squad. He said our very presence defiled him. Tony McGee. I'm sorry?
Nothing good.
Tony McGee, and one source I have spells it MCGEE, and another one I have spells it MAGEE. So Tony McGee said, Coach said we could, quote, go to Grambling State or Morgan State. We could go to Colored Relief. If anyone said anything, he told us to shut up. We were really protesting policies we thought were racist. Willie Highsaw is quoted as saying, he said it was stupid of us to be protesting against a faith and religion none of us knew about. Talk about stupid. Do you know that Ted Williams, not the baseball Ted Williams, there was a Ted Williams that was one of the 14 who was protesting, was a Mormon himself.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so comes from Willie Highsaw. The coach's responses. And it's not like Eaton was, I can't figure this guy out because he earned a master's degree. He was a smart dude. He started doctoral studies. I'm not sure if he ever finished. He was in his 8th year as Wyoming's head coach. So I don't, if this is generational stubbornness or what.
Right.
But his quotes were, it was simply a matter of discipline. Black or white, I don't care. They broke the rules, and I told them they were no longer members of the team. And then he said, we've played Brigham Young for many years. Why haven't we had demonstrations before? And we've had Negro players since 1960. I'll tell you why. This is the first year the Black Student Alliance has been on campus. Now they're organized and ready to act. The Western Athletic Conference was picked because of BYU, and we were picked as the trigger because of our rule against demonstrations. It all fits. The governor got involved, and he met with the university trustees, and they all backed the coach. This season ended on a 4-game losing streak, so they ended up 6-4. The Wyoming Cowboys went 1-9 the next year and had only one winning season in the 1970s. The Wyoming Black 14 injustice steered Black players away from Wyoming for years. In 2018, a mural honoring the Black 14 was unveiled in downtown Laramie. In 2019, on the 50th anniversary of their dismissal, 8 surviving members of the Black 14 were invited back to Laramie in an attempt for the university to make amends. The players were presented with a formal apology written by university president at the time. They were also invited to give speeches in history classes and meet with the current student athletes. A sculpture of a football player's arm, you can tell because it's got the uniform on it, raised upward in a clenched fist, stands in the field house of the University of Wyoming. The plaque reads Black 14 with the names of the players listed in double column. Below the list, the year 1969. The Black 14 are Jerry Berry, Tony Gibson, John Griffin, Lionel Grimes, Mel Hamilton, Ron Hill, Willie Highsaw, Jim Isaac, Earl Lee, Don Meadows, Tony McGee, Ivy Moore, Joe Williams, and Ted Williams. So, any thoughts?
Well, I mean,
story?
institutional racism is here and here to stay. The fact that this coach tried to say that he would have disciplined anyone who was breaking the rule is obviously horseshit, because his threat he's screaming at them, go play at Grambling State, which is historically Black university. I mean, it's the same. I don't know. I mean, things better now than they were, maybe slightly, but it's nakedly obvious to me, not every day of my life, but pretty routinely, that you and I have no idea what it's like to deal with racism, because we're not dealing with it. We're not facing it. Nope. I mean, I was sort of blown away. I don't even know why I saw this. Up late at night when you have that ADD thing and you can't sleep, there is a video that Donald Glover posted. And so he's, musician, comic, he's a extremely prominent, individual. And it's video of him. I think all he's trying to do is get into, he's late or he's locked out of the venue where he's supposed to be performing that night. And he goes over to this police officer and says, yeah, I'm supposed to be in this building right now, and I can't find a way in. I'm supposed to be on stage here in about 7 minutes. And all the cop says is, sir, get off the sidewalk. And he's like, well, officer, I'm, get off the sidewalk. And then it's very, very clear to him that it's gonna be a big ass problem here. I didn't hear, the video cuts off. I didn't hear how it was resolved or how he got in or if he got in. But all these fucking police stops, all these ridiculous incidents where this endless amount of horseshit just continues and continues and continues, where walking while black, driving while black, it's still going on. And so it's just insane and incredibly it just makes my skin crawl.
And going back to the coach's quote, when he starts talking about the Black Student Alliance and blaming the problem on them, anytime minorities of any kind are organizing into, hey, let's stand up for ourselves, let's do this kind of stuff happens, right? I mean, look at the way the Black Lives Matter treatment. Oh, they're a bunch of communists, they're a bunch of socialists,
right?
They're anarchists, they're terrorists. I mean, it's same song, different tune. And some of the things I just want to talk about real quick is just the increasing ability on the right to just absolutely bald-facedly tell Black players to shut up and play. And they're the same silly assholes who defend Aaron Rodgers and his asinine behavior regarding vaccines. It's like, look, if you're not vaccinated, just tell us. I mean, don't do this. Don't play along everybody. And they argue that, well, he's taking his stance. He's standing up for what he believes in. Well, so are these guys.
And so is Colin Kaepernick. All he did was kneel.
Yeah, he's down here on my list. But these folks wear the "I stand for the flag and kneel for the cross" t-shirts.
Right. These colors don't run, and America rocks. And
this just nonsense where it's like the most American thing you can do is protest when conditions are horrible for people. These folks got mad when the Major League Baseball suspended pitcher John Rocker for his public use of racial slurs against immigrants, people of color, the LGBTQ community. I mean, and in his defense, again, Rocker may have not been an asshole, but he was certainly behaving like one at the time, right? Well, it says free speech. It's like, well, actually, Major League, according to capitalist rules now, they're not Congress. Major League Baseball can do what they want because he's an employee. Or a more personal example for me, the way most of my family feels about NBA head coach Greg Popovich, the San Antonio Spurs, right? Here's a guy who tells it like it is. He's an educated dude. I mean, he speaks a couple languages, one of them Russian, which is extremely difficult.
Right.
Air Force graduate.
Well, yeah, multiple degrees. He has a master's degree in
something. I don't know.
Education, I think.
Yeah, he's smart dude. He's won 5 NBA championships.
Right. Shut up and coach.
They despise shut up and coach. They despise him because of his politics, because he dared to say, hey, you know what? Colin Kaepernick, he's doing the right thing. I mean, people are getting murdered every day. And it's kind of like the whole thing about burning the flag. It's like, if the flag has been, we should burn the flag when it's just been dishonored, when it touches the ground, when it's no longer usable.
Right, sure.
Well, to some people, the burning is the most symbolic thing you can do, because in a way you're showing respect for it, because, hey, the institutions that represent this flag have corrupted it. And the same types of folks who dislike Colin Kaepernick for his protest are now the ones that are calling the FBI thugs and villains. So you just can't win with these kind of folks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I forget what episode we delved into this. I mean, we've talked broadly about Dunning-Kruger and just this, that broad. I'm not qualified to speak on this at all, but Dunning-Kruger basically is the approach that says my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. Kind of, it's this random horseshit that I believe that I read on one website trumps, if you'll excuse the pun, all the information that you've read on 100 websites. Just today there was I skimmed this story on because it pissed me off. There's some random dude who was a rabid QAnon Trump person who finally fell off the wagon and shot his wife and adult daughter because Trump lost, and the hinges just fell off the bus and he just lost his damn mind, and then fired at police, and police killed him. I mean, pull your head out of your ass. I mean, seriously, what is your fucking problem at this point? Sometimes facts are just facts, and sometimes you're wrong. And so, you can't go through life as a fucking toddler and just insist that your worldview or your belief system or your whatever is true in spite of this overwhelming tsunami of contrary evidence. But, in 2022, we're living in a world where that's somehow deemed fine, acceptable. I don't get it.
As a coda, here's a little something that will probably wrap this up. Maybe not as nicely, neatly as I would like to, but I'd like to return to the day of the demonstration of October 16th, 1969. The police chief that I quoted earlier, Vernon Brazili, he saw a young black woman holding a sign which read the following words: "Something is happening here, but you don't understand what it is, do you?" And someone standing next to the chief said, "I guess that sign says it all." And Brazili's response was, "Yeah, I guess so." And of course, her sign, that's a paraphrased lyric of Bob Dylan's from Ballad of the Thin Man, which is, "Something is happening here, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones?" Right? So there is something happening here. And are we going to get to the point where we look at the reality and say, this is what's going on? This is what's going on. I mean, what is it that you're defending when you're yelling at people about standing up for people who are being oppressed and killed? What? It's beyond me. And every time you think we turn a corner, someone somewhere behaves like an asshole, and it just stuns me. So I really like this story on the Black 14 because it illustrates so many things about our culture and what these guys went through, and only 3 of them returned to play the next year. 3 freshmen returned to play.
Oh, wow.
And the rest of them went elsewhere. So that is the story of the Wyoming Black 14 of 1969. And again, thanks to Bryan, the Lyft driver, and Bryan, my podcasting partner, for getting us through this story. Sources for this were lots of sources here. Daughter number 3.blogspot.com, personal conversation with Bryan, the Lyft driver. Sports Illustrated's Vaults, No Defeat, Loads of Trouble from November 3rd, 1969. The Eugene Register Guard from Oregon had an article titled Wyoming Faction Asks for Support from SJS. That's from October of 1969. WYOhistory.org. It's wyominghistory.org. They got some great pictures in there too on that website of the players and the murals and all those things I talked about. And then of course Wikipedia for basic information on Coach Eaton and the University of Utah football program. And that is that.
Excellent. Not that funny, but
no, this wasn't
not really a laugher.
Not a place.
Jigger.
Another. I mean, the other place where I could. The only place where I could put in a joke was about the grandmother calling my students, cursing at the students in front of her grandchildren, because it's just not. Yeah, it's just infuriating. And anyway, wow. Let's do something funny next week, because
yeah. Nice job bringing me down with all your talk.
Bringing me down, man. And we start off with something funny as riots, and you bring it down to this.
Yep. Oh well. Sorry. All right. Another one in the books, folks. Thanks for listening. Please rate and share and subscribe. And you can email us at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com. Visit dreamidiots.com. And what else? What else do we have to say? Anything?
Thanks for listening, and be good to each other.